This is Jill Pack with the Seasons of Joy podcast. This is episode number 124, entitled Navigating Grief in Midlife, Finding Hope and Healing. Are you a woman of faith who is struggling to navigate your current season of life? Do you feel like life is just happening to you instead of for you? My name is Jill Pack, and I'm a certified faith-based life coach and a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I want you to know that no matter your season or your circumstance, it is possible to create a more joyful life, and I would love to show you how. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, my friends. Welcome to this week's episode of the Season of Joy podcast. I want to thank you for being here. This is a place where we explore the unique challenges and opportunities that come with this mid-season of life. I want to remind you that if you find this episode helpful and you're feeling a little bit stuck or overwhelmed, I would love to chat with you. I offer what I like to call a clarity conversation. It's a one-on-one session where you and I dive into whatever's on your mind, and we work together to gain some fresh perspectives. If you're ready to explore, I am here to help. Just click on the link found in the show notes or visit my website, www.seasons-coaching.com, and click on the Work With Me tab. Today, we're going to dive into a topic that touches all of us at some point in our lives. So here's this week's episode. So, like I said, we're going to tackle a topic that touches all of us at some point in our lives. That is grief. I want to talk about grief in midlife, whether it's the loss of a loved one, a relationship, a job, or even a phase of life. Grief in the midlife can feel particularly heavy. So what is grief? Grief is more than just an emotional response to loss. It's a complex process that can affect all of us mentally, physically, and spiritually. And in the midlife, we often face multiple layers of grief, whether it's losing parents, experiencing an empty nest, or dealing with changes in our own health. If you're experiencing grief right now, that is totally normal. There are many reasons that you may be experiencing grief, and I want you to know that nothing is wrong with you. Grief isn't something we just get over. I believe it's something we move in and out of, and our capacity to carry it can increase and evolve over time. I remember seeing this illustration once that I believe perfectly describes grief. There are two jars of different sizes. One jar is the size of what I would say like a pint canning jar. And inside that jar is this rock, and it takes up most of the space within that jar. Now, there's a second jar, and it's the size of like a gallon jar. And inside of that jar is a rock that's the exact same size as the rock in the first jar. However, because the second jar is bigger, there is a lot more space around the rock. And I think this depicts grief. It's still there. It's still the same size, but our ability and capacity to hold it expands. So in this episode, we're going to explore what grief looks like in midlife, how it can impact us in unexpected ways, and most importantly, how we can navigate through it with grace, faith, and resilience. Grief can be particularly challenging in the midlife for a lot of different reasons. One could be we experience multiple losses. Midlife often brings these concurrent losses as parents age and pass away, children leave home, peers may face health issues, we may lose a job, right? Like a lot of things are shifting in the midlife. Another reason could be our identity shifts. Losing parents or mentors can shake one's sense of self as the child role is lost. We also experience empty nests, which can also force a redefinition of our role as a parent. We may also have mortality awareness. right? Losses in midlife can heighten our awareness of our mortality, leading to the questioning of life, the existential questioning. We may also have these competing demands. Midlife adults often are juggling caregiving for both children and aging parents, leaving little time to process grief. We may also have unresolved past grief. Earlier losses that weren't fully processed may begin to resurface, which compound the grief we're currently experiencing. We may also have a life reassessment. Grief can trigger a reevaluation of our life choices and our priorities, and this can be unsettling. We may also experience physical changes. Hormonal shifts and health changes in midlife can impact emotional resilience and coping abilities. You may experience things like fatigue or sleep issues, and there's also a potential to make our existing health conditions worse. And again, we may have different emotional responses. We may find ourselves going to frustration, depression, anger, anxiety more often at this season of life. And we may find ourselves with limited support. Our social circles may shrink in midlife, and this reduces our support systems. And people may expect our ability to be resilient and strong more beyond our abilities, right? So there's a lot of complications and challenges that come in this mid-season around this idea of grief. We can experience grief in all kinds of areas of our life. I was sitting here thinking about the last 5 years or so. And as I listed out all these things, these challenges in midlife that I just shared, and I was looking at it, I thought, I've done all of these. Almost all of these I have experienced over the last 5 or 6 years, right? My children have left home. I've had dear friends pass away from cancer or other illnesses. I went through a season of balancing that caregiving for my elderly parents and my kids that were still at home or just launching into college, right? I felt that pull between the two. And then I lost both parents. I've had knee surgery and issues that come with our joints that are aging, right? I've gone through hormonal changes that I wasn't prepared for that were beginning to affect my daily life. I found myself struggling with all kinds of emotions in the beginning of this process, making it hard to navigate life and also navigating strained relationships that I wasn't expecting to have, right? Like all of these things I have been experiencing myself. And when that process began, when all of these concurrent struggles were coming, I remember feeling just kind of blindsided by it. I kind of felt it was unexpected. I wasn't prepared for it. And in a way, it felt like everything was going wrong. I felt lost and broken in so many ways because of the different challenges that we just talked about. And in midlife, sometimes I think there's this expectation that we have to have it all together. But that expectation can make grieving feel so isolating. And then that bleeds into less external support because other people are assuming that we know how to cope by now. We're old, we're 50, we should know how to do this, right? And then in addition, we have these questions, these existential questions that come and almost intensify the grieving process because we're facing a place in life that we've never been before. Now, for those of us who are people of faith, grief can also challenge our spiritual beliefs. We might find ourselves wrestling with questions about God's plan, the meaning of the suffering that we see and experience, and our own mortality. However, our faith can also be a powerful source of comfort and strength during these times. And for me, that has been a huge comfort for me, is to lean on my faith in a Savior, Jesus Christ, a Savior who knows what I've been experiencing, who has felt the grief that I feel. So for me, that does feel comforting to know that I'm not alone. But if you're not there, right, I have some practical steps to share with you. How do we navigate this grief that we are experiencing? What can we do? Well, the first step, I would say, is to acknowledge your grief. The truth is, it's okay to not be okay. Give yourself permission to feel and express your emotions, whether it's through talking, writing, or another form of creative expression. I remember especially at a time when I was feeling so much grief because my parents had passed away and a relationship had turned strained, and I just felt the lowest of lows. And I remember working through with a coach to process that grief that I was experiencing. So just acknowledging the fact that we have grief, we're feeling grief, we're experiencing grief, and it's okay. So how can we express it? What does that look like for you? How can you express that, your emotions? And then the second step I would say is to find support, like I did with a coach. We don't have to go through this process alone. We can reach out to trusted friends, family, a support group. We can get professional help or hire a coach. Sometimes just knowing that we're not alone can make a huge difference. The third step is what my invitation to you would to look at strengthening your spiritual practices. For those of us who lean on our faith, practices like prayer, meditation, reading scriptures can be incredibly grounding. These practices can help us feel connected to something bigger and greater than ourselves and remind us that we're not alone in our suffering, right? We can access the Savior, and it's His suffering that helps us heal from ours. The fourth step is self-care and patience. Grief takes time. And it's important to be gentle with yourself. Engage in self-care activities that nourish your body and your soul. This could be anything from taking walks in nature to practicing mindfulness or simply getting enough rest, right? It's taking the time to take care of ourselves because, in all honesty, what I have found is we kind of move in and out of grief, like times where grief feels bigger than other times. And that's very normal. So how can we support ourselves as we move in and out? What can we do to nourish our body and soul? What does that look like for you? And the fifth step is embracing a new normal. Now, this can feel a little bit hard, right? We don't want to embrace a new normal. But when we can allow ourselves the ability to embrace that, there is some healing that can happen there. Grief does change us, but it doesn't have to define us. Over time, we can learn to embrace a new normal, a life that honors our loss, while also allowing us to grow and find joy again. It's not about ignoring what happened or pretending or moving on. It's honoring that loss, but also allowing ourselves to grow and to find that joy again in our lives. The sixth step is to look for meaning. Many find that their grief leads them to a deeper sense of purpose or a renewed focus on what truly matters. I know for me, when I've had times of intense grief, right? It can be an opportunity to step back and really look at like what matters. People matter. Relationships matter. Who do I want to be in this world? What do I want to offer it? What do I want to bring because of my experiences? What is unique to me that I can bring because of my experience? What meaning and purpose can I bring because of that? And it might involve changes in our relationships or a career or even a new spiritual direction. Where can you look for meaning in your life? Remember, healing is a journey, not a destination. We need to take one day at a time and trust that in time, the sharpness of our pain will soften. We are going to find new strength, new hope, and new beginnings. And we can do that as we acknowledge our grief, be okay with it, give ourselves permission to be not okay. Find that support. Who can support you during your times of sadness and grief and struggling? Where can you find that support? How can you strengthen your spiritual practices? What does that look like for you? How can you lean in and on your faith to help you navigate this so that you don't feel alone in your suffering? How can you take better care of yourself? What are those things that you can do? And then have patience while you embrace this new normal. It's going to take time. And then where can you look for meaning? What really matters in your life? What do you want to create? Who do you want to become? So I want to thank you for joining me in this conversation, this deeply personal conversation on grief. And again, we all experience this at some point in our life. And I would say in midlife especially, there are a lot of opportunities to experience grief, a lot of changes that occur. But I hope that through this conversation, you've been able to find a little comfort, some encouragement, and maybe even some practical insights that might help you or a loved one navigate this challenging season. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you have your own story of grief and healing, I'd love to hear from you. You can email me at jill@seasons-coaching.com. Until next time, take care of yourselves and remember that even in our darkest moments, there is always hope. Thank you for tuning in to the Seasons of Joy podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends and family. If you want to learn more about me or how to work with me, just visit my website, www.seasons-coaching.com, and have a joyful week.